talk the biggest questions at the quarterback position next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm here with Heath Cummings, and we are going to talk 3 big questions at the quarterback position. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about some news that came out on Tuesday. We had a couple of wide receiver injuries that are worth talking about. Terry McLaurin is dealing with a sprained toe. The good news is MRI came back on Tuesday indicating that it is not particularly serious. He's viewed as more day-to-day than week-to-week, so hopefully he'll be fully ready to go in time for week 1. But Heath, I know you're a big Jahan Dotson guy. He had a great game on Monday night against the Ravens. You've got Dotson ranked ahead of Terry McLaurin, right?
Yes, and I have had Dotson ranked ahead of Terry McLaurin before the injury. I moved McLaurin back a little bit when the news first broke. I may just slide him back up to that same range. They're both borderline number 2 wide receivers. I think it's a 1A, 1B situation, but I do think there's a decent chance that Jahan Dotson becomes the 1A this year.
Yeah, I've got McLaurin at 24. I think Dotson's like around 30 for me, so I've got them very close. I assume you have them flipped relatively.
Yeah, it's more like 23 and 26, I think.
All right. The other bit of wide receiver injury news, Jackson Smith-Njigba has a broken bone in his wrist and he will have surgery for it. However, according to ESPN, there's a chance he'll be ready for week 1. I'm not really buying it, but I didn't really move him down in my rankings because I wasn't really viewing Jackson Smith-Njigba as someone who was going to make, someone maybe he could have made an impact in week 1. I wasn't expecting him to. I think you're probably going to have to be pretty patient with him. So he's right around wide receiver 42 for me. Where do you have Jackson Smith-Njigba?
I had him at 36. I may move him back to 38. A couple of guys that like Michael Thomas has been moving up. I may take Michael Thomas before him. I still have Marquise Brown behind him. I know you have Marquise Brown much higher. I might move Marquise Brown ahead of him, but yeah, right in that 36 to 40 range.
You have him behind Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, right?
Right.
Okay. Let's move on to the big questions at the quarterback position. And the first one is, how do you rank the second tier of quarterbacks? Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Patrick Mahomes are the top tier in everyone's rankings. There's no question about that. What do you think the second tier at quarterback looks like? Because those guys are starting to get pretty expensive. You're probably going to have to spend a 4th or 5th round pick. Where do you rank them?
I'm okay with a 4th round pick on Fields and Jackson. I have dropped Burrow back into kind of a Justin Herbert tier until we find out that Burrow is 100% healthy. So those calf injuries can linger, and there's been some speculation he may not be ready for week 1. So I would go Jackson and Fields both in round 4.
And you don't have Trevor Lawrence in that same tier, right?
No.
Okay, yeah. Trevor Lawrence is more in the, for me, Tua Tagovailoa, Deshaun Watson, Anthony Richardson tier, which brings us to our next question. Is Anthony Richardson really worth a top 10 QB ranking in his rookie season?
I mean, it just in a 2 quarterback league, probably not, because the floor might actually matter there. The floor doesn't matter at all in a 1 quarterback league. And I just really struggle to see. I know there's a lot of people very skeptical about Anthony Richardson. I struggle to see how things go wrong if he runs the ball 10 times a game, other than injury. Like we just saw Justin Fields be QB7 with 150 passing yards per game. I don't think Anthony Richardson is going to be worth, like, it's laughable how bad the passing production was for Fields last year. And so, yes, he is absolutely worth it in a 1 quarterback league. No questions asked, because if he throws for 200 yards a game and runs like we think he's going to, he might be a top 5 quarterback.
Do you have him behind Trevor Lawrence?
I do have him behind Trevor Lawrence. Yes.
Behind Tua Tagovailoa?
Yes, but I have Tua technically ahead of Trevor Lawrence. But
okay.
The offensive line for the Dolphins is making me more nervous about Tua.
Yeah, things have been not great in training camp. Teron Armstead dealing with an injury. He should hopefully be ready for the start of the season, but it's not clear right now. And after him, things get pretty ugly in Miami on the offensive line. What about Deshaun Watson? Is he in that same range?
He's behind those guys for me. I'm just not sure that he has any more floor than Richardson does, which is you can't start him in a 1 quarterback league. And I'm not certain that he has the same upside. I did like to see how much he ran in the preseason game, but there's been reports coming out that that passing game hasn't looked that good, and he was flat out terrible as a passer last year.
Yeah, that's the big question, is the passing. He was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL during his peak with Houston, but obviously was very bad last season. Poor reports out of camp. Here's the last question, and this is one that I'm struggling with because I'm worried I'm too low on Trevor Lawrence. Do you think he actually makes the leap this season?
I think he probably takes a step forward. I don't know
Mhm.
about the leap. I mean, a lot of that's going to come down to, can Calvin Ridley be 2020 Calvin Ridley and stay healthy? And then does Lawrence get noticeably better? He has a big leap to make if he's
Mhm.
going to join the Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert's tier. And I think that's probably pretty close to the ceiling for this year. So I would say not the leap, but a step.
Yeah, the way he's being drafted, especially in NFC drafts, he's like a top 50 pick in those drafts, about 25 picks ahead of Deshaun Watson, like 35 to 40 picks ahead of Tua Tagovailoa. I know you mentioned you have Tua ranked ahead of Trevor Lawrence. I've got Lawrence ranked ahead, but it's very, very close for me. So Lawrence, not someone that I'm really reaching for. And like I said, I am a little worried I'm too low on him, because if he does make the leap, we could be passing on a 4,500 yard, 35 touchdown guy in Trevor Lawrence. So I'm a little concerned about that, but not enough to actually change my rankings. So that's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.